Nazarthius and Yeet Glazer met at an agreed-upon location on the 19th of April 2025. Naze went straight to the point. "Work with me," he said. "Work with my family." Naze was the leader of the Lussuria family, a group that fashioned itself as a mafia on Democracycraft, a Minecraft server that allowed players to elect their own politicians. Yeet, on the other hand, was a police sergeant, a member of the server's law enforcement, sworn to protect and uphold the laws written by its elected politicians. "Who's your family?" Yeet asked. "And work how?" "Well, we kill and intimidate," Naze responded matter-of-factly. "We have personal bankers, police and politicians. We work in both Democracycraft and Statecraft." "Are you trying to hire me to the Mafia?" Yeet asked. "Maybe, but I term it as family. Come to the dark side. Together, we will control countries." The two players moved to Naze's mansion to continue their discussions. While indoors, they'd be able to speak more freely without anyone eavesdropping on them. "Yes or no, Yeet?" he asked. "So you said we get to kill police?" "The police works for us," Naze responded. "Well, some." Suddenly, gunshots could be heard from inside the house. Yeet acts without hesitation. "Naze, you've been charged with 8 counts of murder and 1 count of bank robbery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can be used against you. If you wish..." Ugh, it was a trap. It'd been set up all along. For the server's law enforcement, it was another win against a player who had been in their sights for some time. 1 month before, the DOJ caught Naze in a sting operation for running a self-described tax evasion scheme, offering one client help to hide $2.6 million Democracycraft dollars, or around $1,000 at real money trading rates, from the server's tax authorities. How did the DOJ cotton on to him so quickly? Was it because he went around the Discord server posting ads that read, "Better call Naze, don't pay taxes and don't go to jail," or "Get out of jail, make 30% profit"? Or was it because the client he reached out to, Avanish 2008, was actually the server's deputy finance minister and the Treasury's head of compliance? Regardless, one thing stood out. Naze wasn't very good at being a criminal. Naze may have called himself the Don of the Lussuria family, but to some, he appeared more like the leader of a ragtag group of misfits, whose accomplishments included briefly disrupting the president's press conferences. The police had better things to worry about, like investigating reports of a heist from the server's largest bank, Vanguard National Bank. A player using an exploit with the bank's trading platform stole $9 million Democracycraft dollars, $3,600 from the bank, quickly laundering it by making wire transfers to at least half a dozen bank accounts owned by him and other players. The heist had all of the hallmarks of organised crime. Foreign currency was purchased, fake paper trails were deployed, and money mules were used. This wasn't the work of an amateur player. This was the work of someone who had deep financial connections. Move over Naze, a new criminal mastermind's in town, and his name is... Wait, what the hell? Leaving behind a digital trail for the Minecraft authorities to follow likely wasn't the most sound course of action Naze could have taken, and arguably neither is leaving your personal browsing habits exposed without this video's sponsor, private internet access. While you're probably not running a Minecraft-based racketeering group, that doesn't stop your ISP from tracking all of the sites you visit and selling that data on to advertisers. A 2021 report by the US FTC, for example, found that a significant number of ISPs they studied shared real-time location data with third parties, including where people lived, worked, and went for drug rehab. PIA is a VPN that masks your IP address and adds a layer of privacy to your internet connection, allowing you to shift your trust away from your ISP to an open source provider with a no-logs policy and an excellent rating on Trustpilot based on over 10,000 reviews. With just one subscription, you can use PIA on a multitude of platforms, such as Windows, iOS, and Android, on an unlimited number of devices. This allows you to protect your entire household and change their virtual location to access content, such as streaming services from over 90 different countries and all US states. There's little risk to signing up, as every plan comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support. And thanks to PIA, you can get an 83% discount by using the link provided below. That's just a little over $2 a month, and they'll even throw in an extra 4 months for free. Nays and Diarev remember the interview very well. So first off, I'd like to ask, why did your client transfer $20,000 to Rasil Casino? Nays' lawyer responded, I would like to ask you, Inspector. 1. Did the Department of Justice conspire to damage my client's reputation or freeze their funds without any proof? 2. Can I finally see the reason why you are wasting both my client's time and mine? Nays was completely blindsided by the interview. Just a week ago, he and Diarev had worked on a tax evasion scheme to help wealthy clients hide their funds by depositing money across multiple banks. They even had one client deposit $2.6 million Democracy Graph dollars with them. But now, Diarev was sitting on the other side of the interrogation table, and it took a while for Nays to realise what was going on. Did you get investigated, or are you investigating? Nays asked privately. I'm a DOJ investigator, Diarev responded. But aren't you getting investigated too? No, I was undercover. Aw, fuck. The Attorney General who led the operation described the case as being served on a silver platter, because the sting, at least from their perspective, couldn't have gone any better. Nays attracted the DOJ's attention the moment he started posting ads telling people they could avoid paying taxes or going to jail. The thing that really cemented his downfall was when he messaged, completely unsolicited, the Deputy Finance Minister and Compliance Chief for the Treasury, Avanish 2008, asking him whether he was interested in not paying his taxes. May you explain? Asked Diarev, pointing at the messages. Nays' lawyer was not impressed. As far as she was concerned, what Nays had done was no different from what all of the other banks had been doing. So contemptuous was she of the DOJ's so-called operation against a client that she stopped answering the police's questions midway through. Okay, do you understand that deleting messages is obstruction of justice? Do you need a napkin? You can buy one at my store. Oh wait, you can't because you are embargoed. No, may you answer my question first. No one cares about your question. Okay, I'm not your mother and won't answer anything. Ask your mum for a napkin, okay? And leave my client alone. This hearing is over. No, go back to your DOJ kindergarten. Do you understand that tax evasion is a crime? Whee! Do you understand what constitutes a conspiracy? Yeah, that's cool, but who asked? I hope you understand that you are showing zero respect for the legal system and any sort of legal process required. The Attorney General interjected. I suggest we keep this interrogation to its topic if you don't want to be hit with a defamation lawsuit. I suggest you kneel and suck my boots. This hearing is over. We're the ones deciding that. Alright guys, if that's all you want to say, then you might as well tell your client to get comfy, because he's going to be spending a lot of time in jail if you don't start answering questions. And believe me, when I say that the fines won't be light based on the evidence we have right now. So what's it going to be? I wonder what Congress would think about your investigative methods sometimes. For the DOJ, the interview wasn't going anywhere. There was no way in hell they were extracting a confession. For Nays, the interview marked a monstrous betrayal. Diarev was one of the first people he trusted on the server. Diarev, he thought, was one of the little guys, just like him, trying to get by in a dog-eat-dog world. All Nays wanted to do was to help his friend, the owner of a tiny bank, take on the big guys by becoming the Saul Goodman of Minecraft. But Diarev stabbed him in the back, destroying his dreams under the orders of the Department of Justice. Why did they target him, he thought? What was he doing that the other banks weren't doing? Why weren't they going after the big guys, the corrupt bankers, the dishonest politicians? Why go after newbies like him? Nays would never forgive the DOJ for this day. It was the beginning of a vendetta. According to Nays, the sting operation left him broke. All of the money he was supposed to be making turned out not to be real, and any money he did make was supposedly spent on legal fees. Nays needed money. He needed a job. He eventually landed a job at Quark News, a financial news outlet. There, he met the newspaper's editor, Nimq, who was curious about his previous ventures. The two began to talk and eventually bonded over their quote-unquote shared disdain for Diarev. Nimq opened up to Nays and shared his story. A few months ago, he created a bot that could trade securities automatically. The trading platform he used, Vanguard Market Access, was a website set up by Vanguard, the server's largest bank, to allow players to bet on the price of real-life stocks using virtual money. If the stock price went down, the bank won the bet. If the stock price went up, the customer won the bet. In a stroke of genius, Nimq noticed a flaw with how market access was implemented. When the price of a real-life stock changed, the website didn't immediately update. It had a small but noticeable delay. Capitalizing on this, Nimq created a bot that continually compared the prices of real-life stocks on Yahoo Finance and Vanguard Market Access. When there was a discrepancy, the bot would automatically execute trades, knowing with 100% certainty that a stock price was going up or down. By the time Vanguard realized what was going on, Nimq's bot made an absurd 850 million democracy craft dollars, notionally 345,000 US dollars at real money trading rates. The bank, which itself was worth around 33,000 US dollars, if its accounting records were to be believed anyway, had no way of paying out that amount of money. The bank consequently froze his account and accused him of committing fraud. Nimq then dropped a bombshell. While testing his trading bot, he stumbled on a bug that allowed him to generate infinite money on market access. Believe it or not, this incredibly rushed website was filled to the brim with game-breaking bugs, including ones that allowed players to withdraw money they never had. When Nays learnt of this exploit, he begged Nimq to teach him how to do it. "Please tell me your secret." "No." "I'll even write up an NDA," he offered. "A legally binding one." "No chance," Nimq responded. "I have more to lose than to gain." Unlike Nays, who joined the server publicly announcing his intentions to engage in criminal activities, Nimq actually had a reputation to uphold as a respected trader within Democracy Craft's financial sector. He couldn't be seen teaching some random kid how to rob a major bank senseless with an infinite money glitch. But as Nays looked up to him with starry eyes, Nimq thought about it a bit more. If Nimq offered to multiply Nays' money with the exploit, would Nays pay him 40% of it? Nays quickly agreed. Once Nays got his money, did he know how to pay Nimq his 40% cut without immediately alerting the banks and the police? No, he didn't. It seemed like Nays still had a lot to learn. Money laundering is the act of making dirty money, that is, money earned through crime, look like clean money, money earned legitimately. Using an exploit to withdraw money you never had was obviously a crime, and if the two wanted to get away with it, they needed a way to launder that money. Imagine if Nimq generated something ridiculous, like 100 million Democracy Craft dollars, and Nays immediately went to the bank to withdraw all of that money. What do you think would happen? Well, for one, the bank staff would immediately notice and freeze his bank account. And two, the police would probably be caught, and they'd throw him back into jail. The trick then was to generate the money in a way the bank wouldn't notice, at least initially. For example, 2 payments could be made on the 19th of March 2025, a $21,000 one and a $335,000 one. On the 21st, multiple payments could be made, totaling around $3.3 million. On the 22nd, 3 payments could be made, a $573,000 one, a $500,000 one, and another $500,000 one. You get the idea. Once the money was placed into his account, Nays needed to layer the money. make a ton of complex transactions that would make it very difficult for police and forensic accountants to trace where the money went. NIMQ gave Nays some ideas. Vanguard had wire transfer agreements with other banks, including Volt and Voyager, which allowed Nays to transfer his Vanguard funds to multiple banks with a simple Discord command. With the money distributed across multiple banks, each institution would only be able to see a portion of the total transactions Nays was making. Once there, the money could be moved further. Money mules, players willing to lend their Vanguard accounts to help, could be transferred a portion of the funds to make even more transfers. Vanguard to Voyager, Voyager to Rex, Rex to Volt. Once sufficiently layered, the money mules could then withdraw that money and pay Nays in cash. Now, it was important for Nays to move the money around in a way that involved as many innocent players as possible. This was because the more innocent players were involved in Nays' transactions, the harder it would be for the police to track down who exactly Nays' accomplices were and who were the innocent bystanders. One way in which Nays could do this would be to play games of poker. NIMQ and Nays would be at the table, but so would lots of other players. Nays would make a massive bet, intentionally fold, and NIMQ would leave with a bunch of winnings. Other players were also likely to win, but that was the point, because now the police would have no idea which of the winners, if any, were in on it. Another way in which Nays could do this would be to simply buy as many things as possible. Netherite blocks were always a good bet, because they could be stored in chests all over the server, including the chests of other accomplices. Artwork and real estate were also good, because wealthy players often paid a premium for them, even if for nothing else other than the vanity of owning pixel canvases and luxury apartments. Once the layering was complete, the money needed to be integrated. It needed to be reintroduced into the economy so Nays could spend it more freely. Foreign currency was always good for this. Democracycraft wasn't the only democracy server on Minecraft. Many others had a similar premise. Multinational banks and cosmopolitan players were more than willing to buy Nays' Democracycraft dollars in exchange for Statecraft pounds and CityRP dollars. Better yet, as servers like CityRP were entirely independent from Democracycraft, with different owners and different governments, Democracycraft's authorities had no jurisdiction there. Any search warrants, asset freezing orders, and court injunctions would be unenforceable in CityRP. One final way in which money could be integrated was the use of property trusts. A trust is created when one person holds real estate on someone else's behalf. NIMQ could set up a holding company, let's say Secondhand Holdings LLC, to hold properties on Nays' behalf. The name's a bit on the nose, but don't worry about it. As the trustee of the properties, Secondhand Holdings, or more accurately its manager NIMQ, would show up as the quote-unquote owner of the properties on the server's publicly accessible land registry, but Nays, as the beneficiary, remained the true owner of the properties, and he could tell NIMQ to sell the properties when it became safe to do so. In the meantime, NIMQ could manufacture a bunch of fake contracts, ostensibly for property maintenance, for which Nays would have to pay the company. As the company was owned by NIMQ, it meant that Nays was able to pay NIMQ directly under false pretenses. NIMQ's plan was truly an inspired bit of criminal enterprise, and Nays was very keen to get started. Maybe even a little too keen, because despite acknowledging the need to keep withdrawal amounts relatively small, he proceeded to make a $1.9 million transfer to Voyager Bank on the 23rd of March 2025, just 5 days into the operation. Laudalio, the bank's CEO, knew something was up almost immediately. "What the fuck?" texted Laudalio, forwarding the transaction receipt to Freeze. "We should do something." Laudalio, shall we say, had hands-on experience with money laundering. He knew a ham-fisted laundering attempt when he saw one. The Attorney General responded, "I know, right, this motherfucker." The DOJ was now seemingly on the case. The acting finance minister was alerted when, 2 days later, Nays approached him, asking whether he had any properties to sell. Where exactly was Nays getting his money from? a flurry of correspondence followed, and the banks began to take action. Volt froze Naze's account on the 26th of March. Voyager followed suit 3 days later. On the 1st of April 2025, Vanguard finally got its act together and unveiled its massive lawsuit against Naze. The defendant, Naze, has committed a tremendous fraud, much larger, I believe, than the likes of any other crime we've seen in the history of democracycraft, the bank's counsel began. Throughout the last 2 weeks or so, Naze has disregarded all common sense decencies, abandoned moral justice, and more importantly, blatantly chose to disobey the law and to give in to greed and his own desires. In this time, Naze has stolen more than $9 million from Vanguard & Co. through fraudulent stock trading. The bank has been unable to resolve this matter privately, as more than 80% of these stolen funds have already been transferred to other citizens and institutions, and we require the courts to provide a swift and fair judgment on the fraudster, known as Naze. The bank provided receipts detailing every transaction made. The bank provided records explaining how Naze could have generated this money. The complaint was comprehensive and damning. There was no way Naze was winning this case. The speed at which the banks and law enforcement responded probably took the two by surprise, because Naze and NIMQ were still in the process of moving money around. If Naze was going to lose the lawsuit, the two thought the best course of action would be to move everything Naze owned away from his account, so the bank would have nothing to take once they won the lawsuit. Naze would then be able to declare bankruptcy on the debt and start anew. The two, however, needed more time to move the money around, and Naze knew just the person to call. Motion to dismiss. The defendant respectfully moves this court to dismiss the lawsuit under Rule 5.5. The plaintiff's claims for relief lack any legal basis and must be dismissed. Objection. Your Honour, the purpose of an amicus brief is to offer the court impartial analysis. Instead, the author has chosen to focus on civil procedure, effectively acting as supplemental counsel. I move to strike the brief. Objection. Your Honour, opposing counsel has knowingly misrepresented the facts under oath by falsely claiming that Mr. Naze is deported. This is demonstrably untrue, and I am submitting evidence confirming that my client remains in the country. We move to strike this false assertion from the record and a consideration of sanctions against opposing counsel for perjury. Motion. The defendant respectfully moves this court to strike all instances of the word fraud. Motion. The defendant respectfully moves this court to strike all instances of the word fraud, or variations thereof, from the record. Firstly, the defendant, Naze, is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Secondly, the repeated use of the term fraud by the plaintiff is prejudicial and could unduly influence the court's judgment before all evidence has been presented. Thirdly, the defendant has not been criminally convicted of fraud, making it an unsubstantiated allegation rather than established fact. Fourthly, the use of the term fraud without a criminal conviction could be considered scandalous and impertinent, as it unfairly tarnishes the defendant's reputation. May we respond to this ridiculous motion, Your Honour? You may, but the insult was unnecessary. Any future attacks on opposing counsel will have you held in contempt. NIMQ got his cut. Sure, it wasn't the 40% he asked for, not even close, but he managed to get some cash and property through his holding company, the stock exchange, and casino. Naze also got his cut. The banks may have frozen some of his money, but most of it, it seemed, had been laundered successfully. He now had cash, properties, and other assets stored across the server. He even had a stash abroad. With funds in hand, Naze was now able to pursue his dream. He was going to start a mafia. What's your opinion on Naze? I asked Q, a former member of the Lussuria family. Like, did you like him? Yes, Q responded. But later I noticed that he was stupid. Naze was, in many ways, an unorthodox leader of an organised crime group. While many mafias opted to bind themselves with the conspiracy of silence, Nays went the other way by openly posting ads urging people to join his family. Absolutely fabulous starter payment for everyone, he posted. Looking for an arms dealer who's quick and delivers. Looking for muscles, you can be anybody that knows how to use a gun properly. Looking for people with banking knowledge. Looking for politicians. Looking for campaigners. And the main thing we are looking for is business-minded people with business knowledge and experience. And in case the ad wasn't clear enough, he even produced posters of himself with a bunch of guns. Join our family today. A link to the Mafia's Discord server was provided below. It took Nays' right-hand man to politely explain to his boss that open recruitment risked bringing practically every undercover cop in existence to the Mafia's Discord server. It's fine, he'll just do a background check on everyone, don't worry about it. For all of the faults with Nays' recruitment strategy though, one thing became clear. It worked. Players across the server began to join the Lussuria banner. One major driver of this growth was Vanguard's highly publicised lawsuit against Nays. With many players being unaware of NIMQ's involvement, many attributed the heist's work to Nays alone, an act that made him a celebrity overnight. Ever keen to bask in public infamy, Nays went on a public relations blitz to frame his actions as a moral crusade. He was going to fuck the financial system to give to the poor. He was going to protect all those underrepresented in society. He was going to fight the corrupt DOJ that targeted new players like him. And his speeches won over absolutely nobody, with his members joining for other reasons. Q said they joined because they were already friends with Nays, and they were gifted a free plot of land, which won them over. Big Papa 140 said they joined because they wanted access to other criminal ways to get money, essentially using the Mafia as a LinkedIn network for Minecraft criminals. Other reasons included needing money to get started on the server, needing money to fuel a gambling addiction, wanting to indiscriminately kill civilians while getting paid for it, wanting the intellectual challenge of teaching a kid not to self-incriminate themselves in other people's DMs, with evidence attached, and simply doing it for the love of the game. Some players even had intentions to defraud the Mafia itself. One mid-ranking member, Purple, recalled how they were tasked with coordinating quote-unquote terrorist attacks on the server. To incentivize their performance, Nays offered bonuses for successful operations. So, naturally, Purple reportedly lied about many of the spectacular murder sprees they supposedly committed, getting subordinates to fake screenshots and reports evidencing massacres that never took place. All in all, according to Purple, over 70% of the attacks they were paid for never actually happened. Thanks for the pay though! Despite everyone's seemingly differing motivations for joining the Nays Mafia though, the family managed to hold itself together. And this was due, in some part, to the group's ability to deliver some high-profile successes. There were the indiscriminate mass killings, of course. Nays repeatedly claimed that his Mafia committed over 500 murders. But the group also carried out more targeted attacks, such as allegedly bombing the Save Marketplace on Statecraft not once, not twice, not thrice, not quadrice, not quintice, not senice, but septice, an act that would later land Nays a 30-day ban for out-of-character harassment. The family's more enduring successes, however, were in white-collar crime. They bribed a civil servant to pilfer documents from Vault Bank and the Treasury. They interfered with a local mayoral election by offering bribes to players to vote a certain way. They hijacked a major news publication to pump out defamatory anti-DOJ articles in a bid to get its leadership to resign. And the family wasn't done yet, as they came up with increasingly ambitious plans to fleece players out of their money. Nays didn't brainstorm these ideas alone. His targeted recruitment of business players allowed him to assemble a cracked team of confidants who really knew what they were doing. There was JGame7816, the founding Underdon, an alleged former member of the 1008 Mafia, experienced in organised crime and experienced in its challenges. There was Toad King, the lawyer, and skillful technician in his own right. Responsible for independently hacking Vanguard market access, he was fondly remembered by multiple members as being their get-out-of-jail-free card, the guy who could fight the DOJ on their own turf. There was Under the Radar, the financial strategist, Naze's so-called other half, the man whom Naze confessed he trusted blindly. And finally, there was Mega Minor M, the banker and conduit with Democracy Craft's financial sector. A wealthy player in his own right, he allegedly facilitated the laundering of Naze's funds using his own bank, Nexus Bank. The family leadership went back and forth discussing some of their ideas. Maybe they could create a fake private equity firm and embezzle the funds from an IPO. Maybe they could create a fake insurance company that used bankruptcy fraud to avoid paying out claims. Maybe they could even get one of their own appointed as Statecraft's finance minister, hijacking the server's central bank to serve their own interests. Eventually though, they settled on a plan. They were going to do a classic pump and dump scheme. They were going to acquire as many shares as they could in one specific company, they were going to pump the price up by whatever means necessary, and they were going to sell their stocks before they all came crashing back down. But as they began to implement their scheme, a concerning development had emerged. The DOJ was investigating them. A Mafia member on the DOJ server had access to an external Discord plugin that allowed them to see the names of private channels, and they revealed that the DOJ had channels for Naze, Naze illicit substances, Naze fraud, and Lussuria family mafia. The family had to proceed with caution. The feds were watching. Unbeknownst to them though, the DOJ's investigation was nearly complete. They had the screenshots, the chat logs, and the private text messages. One of them, as it turned out, was working with the DOJ. And what they wanted was immunity from prosecution.
Hey man, listen up closely. I know lately you're a bit lonely. Did you know on your phone there's a whole world full of girls you could be looking at, homie? It's true, between me and you, it's only $5 and watch what they do. Let's get high, lose track of time. Come on man, you know I'm a damn good time. Yo, if they're gonna post it, no clothing. Oh my god, so exposed and everything. You might as well see everything. Every inch, never leave or grow in need. Wait, maybe you should DM, be friends, pretend, a boyfriend, the deep end. She needs men, she needs you and your twos. Get out of my head, get out of